Have you ever had a woman walk away from you only to try returning weeks or months later? There's a fascinating psychological pattern that happens in the female mind after a relationship ends. A pattern most men completely miss because they don't understand the unique timeline of female regret. While you're moving forward with your life, something profound is happening in her emotional world that follows a predictable path most men never see coming. The truth about female psychology after losing a valuable man is that regret doesn't hit immediately. It emerges in waves, triggered by specific events that force her to reevaluate her decision. Understanding this pattern gives you powerful insight not just into your past relationships, but into how women process loss, regret, and value. This isn't about manipulation. It's about understanding a crucial aspect of female psychology that most men never grasp. Consider what happened with Michael from Chicago. After a 2-year relationship, his girlfriend Emma suddenly ended things, saying she needed space and wasn't too sure about their future. Michael was devastated but focused on himself, rebuilding his fitness routine, reconnecting with friends, and throwing himself into a work project he'd been postponing. 3 months later, Emma began reaching out with casual texts, then calls about just checking in, eventually admitting she'd made a terrible mistake. What Michael didn't realize was that her regret followed a predictable psychological timeline. The first thing you need to understand is that women rarely regret the breakup immediately. Most women experience a period of relief and empowerment right after ending a relationship. This isn't because they didn't care. It's because women typically process the emotional pain of the relationship long before they actually leave. By the time she walks away, she's already worked through many of her feelings and convinced herself she's making the right choice. Jason from Seattle experienced this firsthand. When his girlfriend Olivia ended their relationship, she seemed almost cheerful, making plans with friends and posting upbeat social media updates within days. Jason couldn't understand how she could switch off her feelings so quickly after 18 months together. What he didn't realize was that Olivia had been emotionally processing the breakup for nearly 2 months before actually ending things. Her apparent happiness wasn't callousness, it was the temporary relief of finally acting on a decision she'd been mentally rehearsing for weeks. The first phase of female regret typically begins 4-6 weeks after the breakup. This is when the initial relief fades, and the emotional void begins to set in. During the relationship, her life adapted to include you, your conversations, your support, your physical presence. When that daily connection disappears, the first pangs of doubt emerge. This timing is crucial to understand, because it's exactly when most men make the critical mistake of reaching out or trying to reconcile, unintentionally short-circuiting her natural regret process. The second major catalyst for female regret comes from comparison, both conscious and unconscious. Women instinctively compare their current emotional state to how they felt in the relationship. As the reality of single life sets in, the negative aspects that seemed so important during the breakup begin to fade, while the positive experiences gain new significance in her memory. This psychological process is called fading affect bias. Negative emotions associated with memories fade faster than positive ones. Brandon from Denver saw this process unfold after his girlfriend Taylor ended their relationship. During the breakup, Taylor had a list of complaints. Brandon worked too much, they didn't go out enough, he wasn't emotionally available. But 6 weeks later, she mentioned to mutual friends how much she missed their Sunday morning hikes and his supportive presence during family gatherings. The challenges that drove her decision hadn't disappeared from her memory, but the positive experiences were now occupying more of her emotional attention as the negative feelings faded. The third trigger for female regret involves social feedback and external validation. Women naturally seek confirmation of their decisions from their social circle. Initially, friends typically provide reassurance that she made the right choice in ending the relationship. However, as weeks pass, this supportive feedback often shifts. Friends who initially validated her decision start asking questions like, "Have you talked to him?" or mention seeing you looking well or succeeding. These external perspectives force her to reevaluate her decision through others' eyes. Sarah from Phoenix experienced powerful regret 2 months after breaking up with Kevin when she saw Instagram photos of him at a friend's wedding, looking happy and engaged in conversation with other guests. What intensified her regret wasn't just seeing him doing well. but the 3 friends who texted her about how good he looked and how much fun he seemed to be having. Those external observations forced her to question her narrative about the relationship and see Kevin through fresh eyes. The 4th catalyst for female regret is witnessing your personal growth or success after the relationship. There's a deep psychological principle at work here. People value what they can have and respect what others desire. When a woman sees tangible evidence that you are improving your life, pursuing goals, or simply enjoying yourself without her, it triggers a reevaluation of your value. The man she thought she knew is evolving without her influence, and this realization often sparks significant regret. The 5th trigger for female regret is one of the most powerful: replacement theory. When a woman ends a relationship, she unconsciously assumes you all remain emotionally available to her in some capacity. There's often an unspoken expectation that you all maintain some connection, whether through occasional texts, social media interactions, or mutual friends. When you completely remove this availability, and especially when there are signs you may be connecting with someone new, it forces her to confront the permanence of her decision in a way that often triggers intense regret. Ryan from Atlanta experienced this when his ex-girlfriend Megan, who had ended their relationship with absolute certainty, suddenly reached out after seeing a photo of Ryan at dinner with another woman. Though the dinner was professional, Megan's message came within hours of the photo appearing on social media. The timing wasn't coincidental. The mere possibility of Ryan forming a connection with someone new forced Megan to confront the finality of her decision and triggered immediate regret. Understanding this trigger reveals something crucial about female psychology. A woman's perception of your value is significantly influenced by how other women respond to you. When she sees evidence that other women find you attractive or worth pursuing, it creates a powerful validation of your worth that often exceeds anything you could communicate directly. This phenomenon, called pre-selection in evolutionary psychology, explains why female interest often increases when there's evidence other women value you. The 6th catalyst for female regret is contrast between expectation and reality. When ending a relationship, women often carry certain expectations about how life will improve without you. Perhaps she imagined more freedom, less conflict, or exciting new connections. When reality fails to match these expectations, when the anticipated improvements don't materialize or new connections prove disappointing, profound regret often follows. This regret intensifies when she observes you thriving in her absence. Connor from Philadelphia saw this pattern unfold after his girlfriend Lily ended their 3-year relationship, explaining she needed to experience life and felt they had become too comfortable. 6 weeks later, after several disappointing dates and the loneliness of her new apartment, Lily began reaching out with increasingly nostalgic messages. The freedom she had anticipated didn't provide the fulfillment she expected, while the stability she had rejected suddenly held new appeal. The 7th trigger involves identity and self-perception. During a relationship, your presence in her life becomes integrated into her sense of self. You are not just someone she spends time with, you are part of how she understands herself. After a breakup, women often undergo an identity recalibration that can lead to surprising moments of regret. As she rediscovers who she is without you, she may realize that aspects of herself she valued were actually amplified by your presence in her life. David from Seattle received an unexpected message from his ex-girlfriend Hannah 3 months after she ended their relationship. In it, she mentioned realizing that her confidence in professional settings had declined since their breakup. During their relationship, David had consistently encouraged her career ambitions and helped her prepare for important meetings. It wasn't until this support was absent that Hannah recognized how significantly it had contributed to her self-image. Now let's discuss the specific timeline of when female regret typically intensifies. The first critical window occurs between weeks 4-8 after the breakup. By this point, the initial relief has faded, the emotional void is increasingly apparent, and the reality of life without you has set in. This period often includes the first tentative efforts at reconnection, casual texts, social media engagement, or questions to mutual friends about how you were doing. The second significant window emerges around the 3-month mark. This timing is psychologically important because it represents a full cycle of adjustment to life without you. By 3 months, she's had sufficient experience with her new reality to make meaningful comparisons to life with you. If you've maintained no contact during this period while focusing on personal growth, the contrast between her memory of you and her perception of your current life creates optimal conditions for regret to intensify. Mark from Denver received the first message from his ex-girlfriend Sophia exactly 12 weeks after she ended their relationship. The timing wasn't coincidental. It represented the completion of her initial adjustment cycle and coincided with evidence of Mark's personal growth through mutual friends. Sophia's message didn't explicitly express regret, but its timing and content, "I have been thinking about our conversations a lot lately," signaled the beginning of her regret phase. The third window occurs around major life events or holidays: birthdays, anniversaries, Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year. Moments when emotional significance and social witnessing combine to heighten awareness of your absence. These occasions create natural reflection points where she evaluates her current emotional state against memories of sharing these experiences with you. The contrast often triggers pronounced regret, especially if she's alone while imagining you celebrating with others. The fourth and often most powerful window for female regret emerges between 6-8 months post-breakup. This extended timeline allows for a complete emotional processing cycle and usually includes exposure to new dating experiences that provide direct comparison to the relationship with you. If you've maintained strong personal boundaries while continuing your growth during this period, this window often produces the most genuine and sustainable regret. The 6-8 month regret window is particularly significant because it usually coincides with the completion of her rebound experiences. By this point, she's typically had enough new interactions to make meaningful comparisons between those experiences and her relationship with you. These comparisons often reveal value in your connection that wasn't fully appreciated during the relationship. If you've maintained healthy boundaries and continued your personal development during this time, the contrast becomes even more pronounced. Jake from Portland received a lengthy message from his ex-girlfriend Amber 7 months after their breakup. In it, she expressed genuine regret and new appreciation for aspects of their relationship she had previously criticized. The timing aligned perfectly with this psychological window. Amber had dated several men during those months, giving her concrete experiences for comparison. What made her regret particularly authentic was that it focused on specific qualities in Jake she now recognized as rare and valuable. Now, let's explore the clear signs that a woman is experiencing genuine regret about losing you. The first indicator is what psychologists call script rewriting. She begins revising the narrative about why the relationship ended. Initial criticisms and complaints are gradually replaced with more balanced perspectives that acknowledge her role in the relationship's challenges. You might hear statements like, "I've been reflecting on what happened between us," or, "I think I misunderstood some things when we were together." Alex from Chicago noticed this pattern when his ex-girlfriend Olivia reached out 4 months after ending their relationship. During the breakup, she had focused entirely on his flaws and shortcomings. In her new communication, she volunteered, "I've been thinking about us, and I realize now I was going through a lot personally that I unfairly projected onto you." This script revision reflected a genuine reassessment of the relationship through a more mature emotional perspective. The second sign involves her efforts to maintain indirect connection to your life. She might engage more actively with your social media posts, connect with your friends or family members, or position herself in environments where she's likely to encounter you. These aren't coincidences. They represent unconscious strategies to maintain proximity while gathering information about your current life. The need to stay connected, even peripherally, often indicates significant regret about the loss of direct connection. The third indicator is increasing vulnerability in her communication. Initial messages after a breakup typically remain casual and emotionally neutral. As regret intensifies, her communication gradually reveals more emotional investment. Questions become more personal, references to shared memories more frequent, and emotional subtext more apparent. This progression reflects her internal struggle between protecting her pride and expressing her genuine feelings. Matthew from Boston tracked this exact pattern with his ex-girlfriend Rebecca. Her first message 3 weeks after their breakup was entirely casual, a question about a restaurant they had visited together. 2 months later, her messages included phrases like, "I was thinking about that weekend at the lake," and questions about his family members. By month 4, she was directly expressing that she missed their conversations and suggesting they meet in person. The fourth sign involves comparison references. As her regret deepens, she may make statements that indirectly compare her current experiences to your relationship. Comments like, "Dating is so exhausting these days," or It's hard to find someone who really listens, serve dual purposes. They communicate her dissatisfaction with life without you while testing your receptiveness to reconnection. These comparative references often indicate she's actively reevaluating the value of what she lost. The fifth indicator is timing-based reconnection attempts. Pay attention to when she reaches out. Significant dates, holidays, or moments of likely emotional vulnerability aren't at random. These timing choices reveal her psychological associations between meaningful experiences and your presence in her life. Consistent patterns of connection during these significant moments often indicate genuine regret rather than momentary loneliness. Daniel from Seattle received messages from his ex-girlfriend Megan on remarkably consistent dates: his birthday, their former anniversary, Thanksgiving, and Christmas Eve. The pattern wasn't coincidental. These dates triggered powerful emotional associations that amplified her feelings of loss and regret. The consistency of this timing indicated genuine emotional connection rather than impulsive reaching out. The sixth sign is one of the most reliable indicators of authentic regret. She begins to embody values or interests that were important to you during the relationship. This behavior represents a profound psychological shift. She's not just missing you, she's integrating aspects of your perspective into her own identity. You might discover she's reading books you recommended, adopting viewpoints she previously rejected, or pursuing activities you valued. Now, how should you respond when you recognize these signs of regret? The first principle is maintaining emotional sovereignty. Regardless of how intensely she expresses regret, your response should emerge from a centered place of self-respect rather than emotional reaction. This doesn't mean being cold or punishing. It means ensuring that any reconnection serves your well-considered personal interests, rather than temporarily satisfying emotional needs on either side. Michael from Austin demonstrated this principle when his ex-girlfriend Jessica reached out 5 months after ending their relationship. Rather than immediately rearranging his schedule for her suggested coffee meeting, Michael maintained his existing commitments and proposed an alternative that worked within his established routine. This wasn't game playing. It reflected authentic prioritization of the life he had built during their separation. Jessica's respect and interest visibly increased in response to this self-assured boundary. The second principle involves careful assessment of genuine change versus temporary emotion. True regret is accompanied by meaningful behavioral shifts and perspective changes, not just emotional declarations. Look for concrete evidence that she's addressed the patterns or issues that contributed to the relationship's end. Without this substantive change, reconnection often leads to repeating the same cycles that led to the original breakup. James from Chicago applied this discernment when his ex-girlfriend Sophia expressed intense regret 3 months after their breakup. While her emotional expressions seemed genuine, James noticed that the communication patterns that had undermined their relationship remained unchanged. She still expected immediate responses while taking hours to reply to his messages. Rather than being swept up in the emotion of potential reconciliation, James acknowledged her feelings while maintaining clear boundaries around communication expectations. The third principle is pacing any reconnection appropriately. Authentic reconciliation requires rebuilding trust and connection gradually, rather than rushing back into full emotional intimacy. If her regret is genuine, she'll respect a measured pace that allows both of you to evaluate whether the renewed connection truly serves your growth. If her interest wanes when you don't immediately provide the full emotional engagement of the previous relationship, it likely indicates regret driven more by temporary feelings than substantial change. Nathan from Seattle implemented this principle when his ex-girlfriend Olivia suggested immediately resuming their relationship after expressing deep regret. Rather than rejecting the possibility or jumping in completely, Nathan proposed getting to know each other again through casual, time-limited interactions that allowed both of them to assess the potential connection from their newly evolved perspectives. This measured approach protected both parties from making decisions based on temporary emotions rather than sustainable compatibility. The fourth principle involves maintaining your continued growth trajectory. The personal development that often triggers her regret shouldn't be sacrificed for reconciliation. The evolved version of yourself that she now values emerged precisely because the relationship ended, creating space for your authentic growth. Any healthy reconnection must accommodate and support your continued evolution, rather than expecting you to revert to your previous self to recreate familiar dynamics. Ryan from Denver embodied this principle when reconnecting with his ex-girlfriend Emma after her expressions of regret. The physical fitness routine, creative pursuits, and social connections he developed during their separation had become central to his identity and well-being. Rather than abandoning these elements to make space for the relationship, Ryan integrated Emma into his evolved life while maintaining his core commitments. The fifth principle is perhaps most crucial. Recognize that sometimes regret is simply part of her growth journey, not an invitation to reconnect. Her authentic recognition of your value doesn't necessarily mean resuming the relationship serves your highest good. In some cases, the most self-respecting response to her regret is acknowledging it with compassion while continuing your separate path. This response isn't about punishment. It's about honoring the growth that separation initiated for both of you. The most powerful position is approaching any expression of regret from a place of genuine choice rather than emotional need. This mindset emerges from a fundamental truth. Her regret doesn't determine your value. The personal worth and capabilities you've developed exist independently of her recognition, giving you the freedom to assess reconnection based on your authentic desires rather than validation-seeking or emotional closure. It's worth noting that female regret operates differently depending on who initiated the breakup. When she ended the relationship, regret typically follows the timeline and triggers we discussed. When you initiated the separation, her regret often emerges more quickly but may be primarily focused on the loss of control rather than genuine appreciation of your specific value. Distinguishing between these forms of regret requires careful attention to whether she's regretting the loss of the relationship itself or simply the loss of choice in its ending. The psychology of female regret also varies based on relationship duration and depth. In shorter relationships, under a year, regret typically centers on unrealized potential and idealization of what might have been. In longer connections, regret often involves more complex integration of your presence in her identity and life structure. The most profound regret usually emerges from relationships that reached genuine intimacy and vulnerability, rather than those that remained in more superficial connection despite their duration. If you've found value in these insights about female psychology and relationship dynamics, hit that like button and subscribe for more content on understanding the deeper aspects of attraction and connection. Share your experiences in the comments. Your perspective helps this community grow and informs future topics. Until next time, keep building a life defined by your authentic purpose, rather than anyone else's recognition of it.